Well, of course, it's a road circuit. It only gets used once a year, Matt, and it takes time to get the Formula One rubber down. Now, there are, of course, other events taking place, local events, and that tends to sort of rub one rubber off to put their rubber down. That's all compounded today because the ambient temperature and the track temperature are lower than they were yesterday. And we're talking about Eddie Irvine and his grip problems. Part of that is because traditionally the Michelin tire seems to enjoy a warmer track condition, a warmer ambient temperature. I'm sure this morning when they get up and discover that it's still very, very cool, in fact, cooler than it was this time yesterday morning, they're not going to be very happy. They're going to have to find other ways to get temperature into the tyres.
It's not really what we expect from Melbourne at this time of year, is it, John? I mean, over the years, this track has always seen great weather. It's hardly ever been affected by rain, but here we are this time, cold temperatures and pretty damp yesterday.
Well, Melbourne's going to penalise us, so they can't predict. I mean, Melbourne, you get 4 seasons in one day. Let's hope that they're going to get the other 3 seasons, certainly sometime, preferably summertime, when it comes up to the qualifying, which is going to start, of course, later in the afternoon.
There's the focus of Australian interest this weekend in many ways, Mark Webber, and it's great to see him taking this opportunity to make his debut. We've got 4 rookies making their debuts this weekend, and at Toyota, a whole new team to deal with. One of their drivers, Alan McNish, also a very interesting rookie starting this weekend.
Well, Alan had a run yesterday. He ended up 16th quickest, and he was, I think, fairly happy with it, though I'm sure, having seen how quickly Mika Salo went, he would have preferred to be, well, that much closer, because within a team, teammates are very, very competitive. Alan McNish's time was 1 minute 30.602. Mika Salo's time was exactly 1 second quicker. Not an awful lot of time to make up, but of course, if you're the person at the wrong end of that second, it's probably like an eternity.
Well, that's it, isn't it, John? I mean, inter-team rivalry, the battle between the drivers, you couldn't get any more battle than there's going to be between these two. Juan Pablo Montoya and his teammate, Ralf Schumacher. We're going to be watching that one throughout the year. And of course, we've got that opportunity all the way through the grid to watch the battle between drivers within a team.
Well, this particular battle, Montoya and Ralf Schumacher, ended up that Ralf was marginally quick.
Performance was, you never know what the performance of the opposition is going to be like. Of course, it's the first time we've had this situation, an old car, new cars, for quite a long time. And I think what happens, particularly at the beginning of the season, people have difficulty optimizing their new cars, and we know this car very, very well. So we're getting 100% out of this car, and I think probably some of the teams with the newer cars have still got to get the maximum out of it. So the gap looks a bit too big. But I'm sure today they're going to get their cars working a bit better, and we'll have a tougher time.
Well, both drivers praised the Bridgestone tyres yesterday. How much of that is an element of Bridgestone concentrating on you now that McLaren are at Michelin?
It's probably a little too early to judge that, but certainly Bridgestone done a very good job over the winter. We were extremely committed, they were extremely committed. The other advantage we have is all the tyre testing was done on this car. So the other factor is that the tyres which we chose and optimized over the winter were optimized for this car, so that helps. But we did have a massive program over the winter with them, and it looks very good here.
Ross, thank you.
The personnel in the team, of course, still based at Enston in Oxfordshire. Flavio Briatore still in charge, but this is 100% Renault. And Jenson Button once again just focusing on that screen, thinking, well, my teammate Jarno Trulli, I know he's very quick, he's a blinder when it comes to qualifying. Trulli was 10th quickest yesterday, Jenson down in 15th. But interesting, Ben, between 9th place and 17th, there were 9 cars in the 1 minute 30-second time zone. Very, very close indeed. Jenson Button in the middle of that segment of cars. But of course, he only needs to sneeze and he could find himself further down, or just a smile and he'll be further up the grid.
It's going to be tight in the midfield. You're watching some emails coming through. These emails get sent through to the teams who then reply to them, and that's why you'll see various emails coming up on our coverage as we go through these free practice sessions and into qualifying as well. Well, we know Jenson's very highly motivated, the team confirming that, and he's gone through a new fitness program as well to get prepared for this year.
He had a big wake-up call in 2001. Very young guy, totally naturally talented, gift. Can't believe the amount of gift he's been given. Yet he seemed to take his eye off the ball, maybe listened too much to the press, the press that were giving him so much adulation. he's readdressed that situation. He's changed his management team as well, which I'm not sure was done for those reasons specifically, but certainly I think that he needed some help in the professional side of his career rather than maybe the more recreational side.
Michael Schumacher preparing within the Ferrari pit. The start of the first free practice sessions on Friday. You know, John, a little unusually, the last 2 years, Michael has had great results here. He's won both races, but he crashed both times on the Friday very heavily the last 2 years. He didn't crash yesterday, and maybe that doesn't bode quite so well for him for the weekend.
He had to go down at turn 6. That's the corner that's really been, I think, the bogey corner for everybody so far this year. He just ran wide in the corner over the gravel. There was no damage to him or to the car, but you know, let's hope that he's going to change that little sort of sequence that he's been involved in previously.
Definitely, let's hope so. They're still running last year's car, remember, Ferrari, with the 2001 car, but it seemed to be still the car to beat yesterday. Fantastic performance from both drivers.
But that car, in fact, although it is the same designated car, but it has been slightly altered. It's a bit lighter. They've also used some of the engine technology for the 051. That's the 2002 engine in the 050, which is the 2001. So it's a bit of a 2001.5 Ferrari, not the full car that they will see probably when they get back to Europe. But they are actually considering, depending on what happens here this weekend, that they might go back to a further week's testing in Fiorano, and if that car proves reliable and competitive, they could take it to Malaysia.
Well, that would be quite something, but looking at the performance that they had yesterday, they still seem to have an advantage over everyone else. But let's wait to see what happens today. We've got 2 free practice sessions coming up here this morning. Now, John, initially these free practice sessions, this first one, presumably they'll still be running with quite a lot of fuel on board and still pretty much working on race setup rather than qualifying setup.
It depends really on the team, but because of the weather yesterday, a lot of teams will spend the time in this 45-minute session to work on the setup, principally on tyre choice, and again it's compounded because of the temperature. Michelin like warmer weather. Bridgestone seem to work more efficiently in this cooler condition. They want to know precisely what they are going to do, because at the end of the second 45-minute session they will have to make up their minds as to the tyre choice they make for qualifying and therefore for the race, and if they get it wrong then their whole race strategy will go out the window.
Once again, another look at the temperatures. Much cooler than we might have expected, although it's coming up a little bit now. So that may help the Michelin runners. We'll have to wait and see. As coming back into the pits, Australia's Mark Webber, the 25-year-old. He was the runner-up in last year's Formula 3000 Championship, and now a major part of that Paul Stoddart-run Minardi team. Managed to gain a huge amount of PR and publicity in Australia over the last couple of weeks, and now he's got to do the job on track, as we're watching Michael Schumacher going out for his first warm-up lap.
Yes, just very much an exploratory lap for Michael Schumacher. Mind you, he's still flat out round turn 9, 10, coming into 11, and then this very quick cut back through 12. Very exciting, particularly when you're on board. Take the opportunity and follow Michael Schumacher on the onboard sector of the programme.
Absolutely, some fantastic pictures to watch. You can see a top speed prediction of 305 kilometers per hour from Ferrari. We saw some very high speeds from Toyota yesterday. There were some of the fastest speed trap figures, and very, very impressive speeds indeed. And we'll keep an eye on those as we go through the course of the weekend.
Of course, top speeds on any racetrack are really only one function of a racing car. It's about getting the balance, and that balance is about top speed as well as cornering speed. But what is very clear, and I think it's also been made, I think everybody in the pit lane is saying, hold on again, what are these guys doing? The power that Toyota engine appears to generate to enable Salo to go 6th quickest on Friday afternoon, you don't get that type of top speed unless you get that lap time and top speed, unless you've got the downforce to go along with it. And clearly they've got enough downforce to carry a good top speed.
Watching Alex Young now in the other of the Minardis, the Malaysian driver. And just crossing the line there, he's the first one to establish a time, so that's why he's gone fastest so far. I don't expect we'll see Alex Young stay at the top of the timesheets for long. Certainly less experienced than some of the other runners out there, but not doing a bad job.
But Alex Young, of course, had a terrible day on Friday. He didn't get any real running on the morning session. Then in the afternoon session, when he went out on the track, it was all because he had to change an engine. When he went back out on track, he got caught with that little bit of rain just down into turn 1. He didn't get one flying lap. He did a time of 1 minute 44.011. He's improved obviously to 39.316. But Alex Young is really having to play catch up. and it's very, very difficult when you lose so much time. He virtually had no running in those 2 sessions at all.
Nick Heidfeld sitting in the Sauber pit, ready to come out now. He starred yesterday, was very competitive, 5th fastest. We're looking there at Kimi Räikkönen, who was his teammate at Sauber last year. Nick Heidfeld feeling a little upset, perhaps, that he was passed over in favour of the young Finn with so little racing experience. But Räikkönen was a star, there's no doubt about it. Now his big test will begin as he moves into one of the top teams, McLaren, and to see whether he can begin to challenge this man, because this is the target for everybody, whoever they are, young or old, top team or not. The man to beat is Michael Schumacher, as he proved yesterday, and that's going to be much the same story throughout 2002.
And Alex Young coming up to complete another flying lap. 39.3 was his previous best, so he's taken a further 1.3 seconds off that. And it's just a question of slowly catch the monkey for the young Malaysian driver. It's very easy to try and overdrive quickly, you know, trying to make up the time that you did lose, while his teammate Mark Webber, who also had some problems as well, sitting in the pits.
Well, we interrupt the commentary just for a moment to join live from Melbourne Tom Walkinshaw, who's made a few headlines around the place this side of the world with news of his reported takeover, I'm not sure if that's the right word, of the Prost business. Tom, perhaps you can explain exactly what's happened.
Good morning. Well, we're going to be responsible for doing the engineering backup to the consortium that's acquired the assets from Prost. So that's what's going to happen as far as we're concerned.
So some people are saying that TWR now own Prost. Is that a bit of an exaggeration?
Yeah. Well, like most things in Formula One, it's always exaggerated. So yeah, TWR don't own Prost.
So will Arrows be affected by this?
No, Arrows is not involved in the deal at all, and we've got to stay totally focused and try and have a good year. I think we've got a good car, and it's up to us now to try and get the most out of it.
Yes, to get back things, or two things on the track. How are Arrows doing in your estimation?
Well, yesterday morning we were quite quick. In the afternoon we ran with a lot of fuel to make sure our brakes would be good for the race, because we weren't sure if it was going to rain today or not. I think now today is the first time you really know where you are compared to all the other cars in the race. But I think we've got a good car this year, and I would expect us to do quite well.
Okay, Tom, thanks for joining us. Good luck today and tomorrow.
Well, the one question we didn't get asked there, of course, was who actually does own the team. TWR are doing the consultancy work, but it didn't answer the question as to who has actually bought it. And certainly Paul Stoddart of the Minardi team has been on radio, and he is not a happy camper at all, and that's an issue I think will probably run a bit further than just simply being a story in Melbourne.
Well, it's great to see, isn't it? First round of the championship, John, and already there's skullduggery and politics coming into what's going on the grid, and we haven't even got the season underway.
I think the core of the problem is that if the Prost team actually went out of business, then the Minardi team would become the 10th team. They would be therefore the beneficiaries of some of the perks, if you like, and well, it's a story that we'll hear more about, I think, a little bit later over the weekend.
Ralf Schumacher sitting quietly in his pit lane in the pit box at the moment. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, there he is, driver for the Arrows team, after a lot of waiting around to see whether he would be driving for Prost over the winter. The news came, of course, that Prost was shutting down, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen was then grabbed by Tom Walkinshaw, and a great opportunity for Walkinshaw to put a proven Grand Prix winner into one of his cars. Not really since Damon Hill was an Arrows driver has there been a driver of this kind of calibre in one of these machines.
Well, I think Heinz-Harald Frentzen is very motivated. He's certainly very keen to prove that what occurred last year when Eddie Jordan sacked him from his team to get back into a Formula One car. And the Arrows package is actually a very, very good package. The car designed by Matt Coughlin and Sergio Rinland. They've got the Jaguar engine, which is really a Ford Cosworth engine. They're on Bridgestone tyres. Not very heavily sponsored. That's one of the things where the team really are looking for additional support. But, you know, a few good results in a car like that, that's what will encourage people to come along and make contributions to the Arrows team.
So in the Sauber pit now with the Petronas engines. These are Ferrari engines of previous year, but of course pretty late spec Ferrari engines, pretty much what Ferrari were running at the Italian Grand Prix of last year, I believe. So they are very, very impressive machines, very impressive engines. And I hear it, can't you? When the driver starts to push that little bit harder, everything looks and sounds quite different.
Yeah, but just watching Fisichella out on circuit, you could see that there's not an awful lot of grip coming from the circuit at the moment. Track temperature's cool, the tyres, they are preheated, but of course they're not working maybe at the ideal temperature, and he was picking up a little bit of understeer, particularly as he was coming out of turns 7, 8 and 9 and all that area of the circuit.
So now we ride on board with Mark Webber heading down towards turn number 3, picking up the speed and then hard on the brakes down here. We're looking at Alan McNish now in the Toyota.
But McNish is the man who's certainly quickest car on the track right now. He's shown personally quickest in the first and second segments, and in fact it is only his own teammate Mika Salo, who's now also on track, who's eclipsing him. So do not be surprised to see Alan McNish go to the top of the timing sheets at the end of this lap, but he could be eclipsed by his own teammate in another 30 seconds.
Across the line, and indeed Alan McNish goes fastest in this free practice session. Fellow Scot David Coulthard keeps an eye on him.
And McNish has gone half a second quicker than he did in Friday's practice, so already now we're seeing that times are going to be quicker than they were on Friday.
Yes, the track beginning to clean up that little bit more, and we see this every time in Melbourne. Each day it gets faster, and we can expect to see even faster times coming up in qualifying. McNish still pushing hard here.
This is Mika Salo, in fact, coming up to conclude his lap. Mika Salo was quickest in the first segment, personal best in the second segment. Now coming out of turn 16, rushing down towards that start-finish line. Got to beat a 30.179 of Alan McNish. Half a second away. He lost time in the second and third segments, and Ove Anderson looking at the screens think, well, what went wrong, Mika? You were quickest in the first segment, why did you lose it in the other two?
I wonder if Toyota may well try sample qualifying runs in this free practice sessions earlier than some of the other teams, because it's something that they have to get used to, something that they've got to prepare for. Look at Salo, you can see the way that car's working, that he is pushing very hard indeed.
Came out of turn 5, cars working, you say, very hard indeed. Well, so's Mika Salo, runs right to the edge of the curb, just keeps it in control. So Alan McNish is currently quickest in that first segment, nothing in the second, nothing for Mika Salo here either. So again, maybe they've gone out on fresh tyres, they've seen the best of the tyres on their initial first flying laps, and now the tyre will begin to stabilise. But Mika Salo still quick, 302 kilometres per hour before he came into that second segment. Exits out of 12, gets on the grass but doesn't have any problem, and now up to turn 13.
So Mika Salo, can he just try and snatch that time away from Alan McNish, the fastest time so far? It doesn't really mean a lot, except perhaps a little bit of personal pride. And again, you can just see coming through the last couple of corners now, is he going to keep it on?
I think he's got a problem. He's got understeer. He had it coming through 14. You could see him through 15. He's struggling with the front end of the car. So he had a personal high speed, stays in second place. Again, speed is high, but the actual court, a big lock-up as well, and he's lucky to stay on track and not go across the grass with that one.
That's right, and those tyres are certainly well past their best now, as Mika Salo will back off a little bit. So Takuma Sato we're watching now, Japanese driver who has taken one of the seats at Jordan, so making his debut here this weekend. But look at that, working the steering wheel. He's not afraid of a Formula 1 car, and this guy was very impressive in British Formula 3 last year. Let's hope he can make an impressive debut here this weekend.
Well, throughout Friday's practicing, he was, I thought, just the most outrageous kid I've seen. I mean, literally, he grabs the Jordan by the scruff of the neck. He works very hard in the car to do it. He's not doing it just comfortably. He's working hard at it, but he seems to have an enormous skill, huge ability to react to whatever the car is doing. Watch the engine revs there, you can see on screen, and also the readout, 17,500. It should go almost to 18,000. Well, not yet from Honda. They need to get that engine to rev more than not delivering the horsepower that they had expected. They say there are developments coming along, but everybody, BAR and Jordan, want it now.
So great view looking back into the helmet of Takuma Sato, as Olivier Panis has just become the fastest man in this free practice session in another Honda powered machine, but it's the BAR Honda, not the Jordan Honda. Takuma Sato continues his way around.
And while Sato's making his way around, we've now got Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who's the quickest in that first segment.
Listening to a little bit of the team radio there.
We're on CC lat, are we on, John? Lap 4, lap 4.
While the driver's hard at work on track, the team keeping an eye on the progress through the session, watching which tyres they're using, watching the fuel consumption. So many areas that they're monitoring. Let's just see what Takuma does this time as he goes across the line. Good effort that from the Japanese driver. He's 6th fastest at the moment. Olivier Panis with that fastest time in the early stages of this first free practice session.
And just look at Sato. I mean, has anybody ever told them this is a Formula 1 car? They're not meant to be driven like that. They've got traction control to stop them doing that. Well, in fact, talking about being quick, Heinz-Harald Frentzen has gone second quickest. We saw him being quick on that first segment. He's got it all together. He's now second quickest behind Olivier Panis in the BAR.
Just under half an hour to go in this session. Here is the fastest man so far, Olivier Panis, and he goes slightly faster than his previous best as well. So dialing that car in well, and faster than Frentzen. McNish is 3rd fastest, and Enrique Bernoldi 4th fastest at the moment. So that's a good effort from both of the Arrows drivers, but again, perhaps we're seeing Bernoldi and Frentzen a little less fuel in those cars. Mika Salo in the Toyota in 5th, then Fisichella, and on down through the list we can see some of the more fancied runners perhaps not trying to put a quick lap in yet.
Well, Michael Schumacher has been in and out, literally did a 1 lap. Sitting in the pits, they're just waiting to see, I think, really what the temperature is going to do. Are they going to decide on one tyre or the other? And also the 2 McLarens and the 2 Williams really just hovering around the midfield, not looking particularly threatening, just waiting for that moment to go out and really start getting down to some serious pre-qualifying work.
Jarno Trulli sitting quietly in his Renault. Yes, we've got to get used to calling it a Renault rather than a Benetton. A big Renault badge on the front there of the car, and that's
it's a Renault, Ben. It's a Renault.
It is. It certainly is. We're just going to have to get used to that. I'm sure I'm going to catch myself calling it a Benetton before the end of this Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher sitting and waiting.
But Jenson Button in that Renault, not the one you saw in the pit, but the one that's out on the circuit. He is now the quickest man in that first segment, so we're going to watch what Jenson Button's doing while Michael Schumacher fiddles around, gets into the car, out of the car. There is Jenson Button coming up to the conclusion of that second segment to see whether he can continue the progress that he made. First time we've really seen the performance from Button that we saw 2 years ago, but it's a personal best, but it'll be very encouraging for Renault and for Button.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing here, John, is how must he be feeling to actually be in a car that responds properly? I mean, last year, there was no doubt they were struggling. That Benetton Renault, the engine was down on power, the chassis was not great. Towards the end of the season, they started getting it together. But to have a car that's handling properly gives the driver so much confidence. I
think that Jenson, he'd come from a Williams. That was a car that suited his driving style, suited his whole psychology of being a racing driver. The Benetton at that time did not. And in fact, Jenson Button's gone 3rd quickest. But this year, the car, the engine, the whole package is a very much better package. Jenson has been able to express to the team what he wants in a car, and it's showing through in performances.
Oh dear, we have problems for Pedro de la Rosa. We can see flames from the rear, and it looks as though a terminal failure for de la Rosa, and that's a great shame. He he's down in 12th position at the moment, had set one lap but nothing particularly dramatic. So Olivier Panis, fastest so far. We're looking at Mika Salo, 6th fastest, just behind his teammate Alan McNish.
But Jenson Button once again still out on track, still continuing his run, has yet again set a fastest time so far in that first segment. So Renault and Michelin are getting something together. This is Jenson. Let's ride with him up through 10, 11 and 12.
And there it is, P1 for Jenson Button across the line, and smiles within the Renault camp. My goodness, last year there were hardly any smiles in that pit garage, but now look at that, great news, and Jenson driving with that flair once again.
Yes, and the 1.3 seconds quicker than his time from Friday. That's a big chunk of time. He was 15th quickest on Friday. Currently he's quickest man on track.
Good news. Let's hope it's the return of Jenson Button to the sort of form we saw in his debut season with Williams BMW. Now then, for British interest, David Coulthard on track, and we haven't seen him put together really any laps so far. He had a problem yesterday, John, with the left rear wheel, which certainly hampered his efforts in that last free practice session.
I don't know what the problem was. They didn't explain it particularly clearly in detail. They just said a problem of the left rear wheel. These cars are very, very fragile, very sophisticated, and in spite of the amount of testing that McLaren Mercedes-Benz team did, these problems do occur.
Well, David now just beginning to pick up the pace with the McLaren Mercedes. This new engine once again from Mercedes, from the Ilmor concern. Mario Ilian coming up with another new engine, and there's been little talk that perhaps it's not producing the high horsepower figures of some of the others. David using every bit of the track there.
Yes, the engine, there's a little bit of a mystery as to whether the engine's as good as last year, or whether in fact that's even as good as the engine from 2000. But David Coulthard quickest in the first sector, quickest in the second sector by, well, it was 0.8 of a second in the first, down to 0.4 of a second. So expect to see a time somewhere in the 127s pretty early in this session from David Coulthard.
Some news from the pit lane. Peter Windsor just telling us it was a rear wheel sensor problem that David had yesterday. That's what curtailed his second free practice session. These cars, John, they're covered in a plethora of sensors all over the place, and it only takes one of those to go wrong and it stymies a whole session.
127.505, and that's only 0.3 of a second away from Michael Schumacher's time, and we've only been running for some 20 minutes.
Well, as we would expect to see then, the track cleaning up, the times already coming down, and it's a British 1-2 at the moment. David Coulthard ahead of Jenson Button, Nick Heidfeld up into third in the Sauber, Panis, who was fastest for a while, now down to fourth, ahead of Frentzen and Benoldi, then McNish seventh, ahead of Villeneuve, Salo, Fisichella, then Takuma Sato, and right behind him Ralf Schumacher. But David's still on track, as we were now watching Jarno Trulli in the second of the Renaults.
Oh, another big lock-up coming into turn, and that's the problem. If you get it wrong as you approach turn one, because it is very, very soft and gentle grass, as it were, unlike some other circuits which are very lumpy and bumpy, you can afford to keep the car straight, run across it, not do any damage. But Jarno Trulli, of course, recognised as being probably the greatest qualifier in Formula One, even better than Michael Schumacher. The guy is just blindingly quick for that one lap. Let's look again and see what happens. Coming down, chooses his braking point, 100 metres, 50. When he was so late on the brakes, dragged that right front, he just chose to cut across the grass, get back on track. Now he's discovered that the braking zone where he was braking ain't going to work. He's got to back off milliseconds before.
Of course, he's then got to get used to the fact when it's got new tyres on, it might be different again. Pedro de la Rosa in the pits in the Jaguar. Let's just having a look down the list, the two Jags not performing that far up the order at the moment. Irvine, in fact, down in 16th. as we now take a look at what Kimi Raikkonen is up to.
Just watch Kimi Raikkonen when he comes out of these next 3 corners, brakes into turn 13. He is so late and hard on the brakes. Coming up to turn 13 now, just wait and see.
Now he's backed off a bit.
Yeah, coming in. I think, I don't know what he did. He didn't brake as late as he did in some of Friday's on-board sessions. So I think he's coming into the pits.
There we are. Raikkonen comes in. And in fact, there's the pit board telling him to do so. So maybe he was under instructions there.
Well, he just completed a lap. In fact, he'd gone second quickest. So he was just... McLaren insisted that all their drivers on their in-laps run flat out. It's only in the last corner that we saw Raikkonen back off. That's because the team want, when the car comes in, to know exactly what the tyre temperatures are, not having a driver back off for 3/4 of a lap and get inaccurate information.
Ferrari content to sit and wait for the moment. Everything went well from yesterday. They can allow everybody else to continue cleaning that track up a little more. It's still going on. The rubber is still being laid down, and times are going to continue to improve. Coulthard has just come back into the pits once again. So it's Coulthard, Raikkonen, Panis, Trulli, Button now down to 5th, and Nick Heidfeld 6th fastest. So for the moment, McLaren with their Michelin tyres. Remember, the first Grand Prix that they'll be running the Michelin tyres here this weekend. Looks as though they're adapting pretty quickly. Now let's just take a little look at a replay here. Felipe Massa in the Sauber, the new boy, another of the rookies this weekend. He also takes a little trip across the grass.
Well, you could tell there was something going to go wrong, because he actually turned into the corner much earlier than you would normally do. And Massa knew he had to get some way to get through that corner by making it as straight line as possible.
Rubens Barrichello out on circuit now. Let's just watch him with that Ferrari, working the steering a little bit through turns 1 and 2. And now we ride on board. Fascinating watching the rev counter on the left there, and you can see in a couple of places where they change up a fraction early, or quite early sometimes, to reduce the wheel spin. Through the fast left right there, and now heading down towards that turn 13. Across the line, fastest goes Rubens Barrichello, and John, the commitment through that last corner, that was impressive. He was able to get on the power so early.
Well, what we're watching now is not a battle between teams, but a battle between the two tyre companies, and that time from Rubens Barrichello has beaten by over 1/4 of a second Michael Schumacher's time, which everybody in the pit lane yesterday said, well, what is it? You know, this is... So the Ferrari and Bridgestone have taken the challenge away from McLaren and Michelin, but still Michael Schumacher only now going out for his first proper run. He's done one installation lap, out and back in. He's been sitting in the pits for almost half an hour, finally goes out on track.
Temperatures come up about 1 degree, but nothing more than that. And Ross Brawn keeps an eye on progress as Michael comes out on track. His teammate's just gone fastest. Interestingly, when you look back over the history of this Grand Prix in Melbourne, the front row has always been a team affair. It's remarkable if you look back over the history. It was Williams in the early days, then McLaren dominated, and then Ferrari getting a 1-2 last year. Same sort of thing happened yesterday, 1-2. I wonder if we're going to see that team formation take place on the front row this weekend?
Well, certainly the one thing that will contribute to that will be the tyre situation.
Okay, Felipe.
Felipe Massa has gone 5th quickest. I mean, first time here in a Grand Prix car.
You had traffic in the first time lap in sector 2.
On the brake, it's more on the front and locking a little bit, you know. And after it's okay. For the second lap it's better, but in the beginning.
Maybe the temperatures. Maybe the temperatures. Ask Mike to check. But the car balance is not too much understeer on the first lap. The oversteer is okay, or the second time lap was nervous already.
Oh, the first lap is better, but the second lap the car is a little bit nervous.
It's amazing having this team radio to be able to hear what's going on between the driver and the engineers. In my day, you wouldn't have been able to put it out on air. It was so many expletives in it, but maybe these young drivers are better educated or something than we were, Ben.
Does it depend whether it was a good weekend or a bad weekend, John?
Something like that.
Michael's on track then, and we'll see how he compares with the split times that Barrichello has set up. A 29.033 on the first sector. That's what that time is showing you. When you look at the clock counting below, that will tell you whether Michael is faster on that first sector or not. Well, there he goes, straight away faster than his teammate. Paul Rubens, what does he have to do?
But watch the Ferrari. What is, I think, so interesting about it is the way that the car really, really works with the driver. Michael Schumacher can go into a corner, turn. Oh, that's a Jordan.
And I think that's
Sato.
Is Sato, Takuma Sato, the Japanese driver. Our first big impact of the weekend.
And that's done at turn 14.
Go back to pit.
So he's got into the, you can see he's just run wide, he's caught the curb. So the red lights come on, the session is stopped to enable the corner workers and the recovery of that car. That's a great shame. I mean, he's been absolutely stunning, but I have to say it doesn't come as any surprise because he's been driving absolutely on the ragged edge throughout Friday. Let's look again, see, he turns in. Oh, then the back, he's too high on the exit of the corner, and then the car got onto the green bit of the track, the back end broke away, the safety bails. Look again, watch where he comes in. Yeah, it doesn't look so bad on the onboard camera, but you'd think that the back end of the car was already beginning to get away from him while he was just getting through the apex of the corner. Once it's gone, there's no margin or room for error there whatsoever, and a fairly heavy impact, but those are bails in front of the solid barrier itself, so let's hope the damage is only very superficial and nothing structural to that Jordan chassis.
The lads just preparing themselves for a bit of work to be done now. We've only got just under a quarter of an hour of this first free practice session still to go, as the session has been stopped for the accident. There's then another 45-minute free practice session coming up, and then a gap before the qualifying gets underway. Jenson Button making his way slowly past Takuma Sato's stricken Jordan. And a great shame, as you say, for Sato, who'd been showing us some pretty exciting driving techniques over the first day or so, and I hope this doesn't temper his enthusiasm. John, it's important, isn't it, for a young driver to build the confidence gradually, and if you start having one or two too many accidents, it can destroy the confidence so quickly.
Yes, I think it can do, but I think someone like Sato is... I don't think he's going to think about it too much. It's just a driving error, it's a racing mistake. It's a part of being a racing driver. Okay, it's come relatively early in the season for him, but he had a couple of shunts in practice, or in testing I should say, so it's not something he's unfamiliar with. But of course it puts pressure on the team. They don't need this additional work. They would like to go through both sessions today without any need to take the car, rebuild it completely, and of course that puts pressure back in the UK on the Jordan headquarters at Silverstone. There'll be somebody there now will already be ordering new parts to replace those that have been damaged. Even before the car gets back, they'll be watching this broadcast back at Silverstone.
That's right, and also monitoring an awful lot of what's going on in the car itself. Another leap view from the onboard camera.
If he was a half a foot or maybe a foot at most wide at the entry to the corner, it was enough to let the back end drift away. And of course, when you're so committed as Sato has been, once it's gone, that'll be it, over and done with. And he had no chance to recover at all. The only thing he could have done if he was prepared to take the chances to literally floor the throttle and try and spin the car back into the centre of the track. But of course we saw David Coulthard do that last year, and he ended up sticking it into the barrier on the other side of the track. So there's not much room for escape if you do get it wrong, and sadly Sato got it wrong this time. Looks pretty superficial actually, Ben. Bodywork, radiators, right side suspension, but doesn't look like there's too much more than that, and I think that car can possibly be repaired, certainly for Sunday, but he will be in the spare car, I imagine, for qualifying this afternoon.
Interesting to note there, John, that the wheel tether's doing their job very effectively. We've got several wheels dangling, but none of them have become detached from the chassis.
Well, a very important safety consideration. The safety ties that have been attached to the cars have been further increased in their strength, and to keep the wheels attached to the car is something that everybody is very concerned about.
There
in fact, look at that, it's done a good job.
It has, it's done exactly what is required. Quick look at the classification with just under quarter of an hour to go. It's still Barrichello heading Coulthard from Raikkonen. The two McLarens running well in this morning free practice session, but we haven't really seen Michael Schumacher put in a lap as yet, and looking at what he did yesterday, he may well be able to go out and put in a much quicker lap straight away. A little bit of tyre damage to be repaired here, tyre wall damage. They'll have to sort that out before the session restarts. Take another look here.
Well, you just see the back end just gets away. He's high on the exit of the corner, and that's really where all the trouble starts. And then once he gets onto the grass, which of course is still wet, the gravel, which has had rainfall and has probably compacted it maybe more than it would normally be. Gravel really should be re-raked every night, but of course here in Melbourne they paint the gravel, so that means they have to get the can out as well.
Just another quick look at it there. Oh, and away it went. You can really see from that onboard view.
Well, let's take a chance while they tidy up the track in Melbourne to cross back to the pit lane and join the Minardi team boss, Paul Stoddart, one of two men making headlines after the first day of the Australian Grand Prix. Paul, the other man, Tom Walkinshaw, who we spoke to earlier to ask whether he'd taken over the now defunct Prost team, and he said all he was involved in was the engineering side for the consortium that has taken over. What's your take on this situation?
Well, I don't actually think that's the case, and I think time will tell when this all goes to court, as it will. Basically, our opinion is that what happened is fundamentally flawed in law, and I think we now have to leave it to the courts to decide, which I'm sure they will between now and when that team attempts to present itself at a Grand Prix.
How would any takeover of the Prost team affect Minardi?
Well, first of all, I just don't think it has been taken over. I've read a communique this morning from the liquidator explaining what he's purported to have done. We followed it very closely for 11 days, and we don't really think anything's happened. Whoever the purchaser is, Tom Walkinshaw or somebody else, we think they bought a car collection, basically, not an entry.
And yet there has been a row, you've admitted to it, and you say that you're going to court.
Well, we're going to make sure that what is basically something that's flawed in both morally and legally doesn't actually take place. So if that means going to court, then so be it, because it does affect us financially, but also I believe it's wrong for the sport.
Well, away from the court and to the sport itself, what about Minardi? Are you set for a big move up the grid at last?
I think we're going to obviously have to wait and see how everybody else has improved. We know how much we've improved since last year. We've found a lot in aero. We've obviously, with our partners Asia Tech, we've picked up on horsepower. But obviously nobody really knows till Melbourne as to where they're going to be. And usually the first few races throw up a few interesting results. And when we get to Imola, we'll see where everybody really is.
OK, Paul, thanks very much and good luck today and tomorrow. Let's cross to another part of the pit lane now and join the Jordan boss, Eddie Jordan.
Jordan, we've just seen Takuma Sato go off in quite spectacular fashion. First of all, is he okay?
Well, I can't answer that because I haven't spoken to him, but the initial, there he is on a motorbike at the moment on the way back here, so yeah, he would appear, and he did radio in to say, listen, sorry, I've had a big shunt. So that's always a good sign. Good sign insofar as that he's well.
Now, looking at the car after the accident, how easy do you think that's going to be to rebuild?
Well, it looks a comprehensive accident. All the body panels are destroyed. Both wheels are falling off from a safety point of view. What is reassuring with a crash with the severity of what we've just seen, and that all the wheels stayed on the car, which is part of the new FIA regulations. That is a big bonus, because what you don't need is wheels leaving a car. And if there is anything to learn from it, is that the new rules are obviously being designed to do the job properly.
How many spare cars do you have here?
Well, we're only allowed the one, and it looks as if we're going to need it.
Thank you, Eddie.
Well, the pit lane is now open, and Eddie Jordan saying we're going to need the spare car. Of course, Takuma Sato will not be allowed to run that spare car until qualifying starts, which is, of course, at 1 o'clock Melbourne time.
Just listening up to Juan Pablo's team radio.
Like 13 to go, 30 minutes. Goes to a red flag.
And everybody now very aware, with just 13 minutes to go in this session, not a lot of time left to fiddle with setup before the checkered flag comes out, but there is another free practice session, remember, of 45 minutes before they have to make their final decisions for qualifying.
But Michael Schumacher, the man who's pretty much sat out the best part of this session, he of course went out on the lap that Sato had his accident, so he's probably feeling slightly frustrated now, knowing that there are just 12.5 minutes remaining. He'll want to get in a solid run of 3 to 4 laps before he then has to think about, well, I've got a bit of a 30-minute break, then we go into that final 45 minutes, and that's the point where I will then finally make my decision, and particularly on the tyre choice. If they haven't made it already, certainly he will have to make it in that final 45 minutes.
And a ramp on the outlap, a ramp on the outlap. Do not press the button.
So more instructions for Juan Pablo as he leaves the pit lane. Patrick Head keeping a close eye on proceedings and seeing whether these two can get their Williams BMWs up with the Ferraris. Certainly a lot is expected of Montoya, but what's this? Perhaps we have a little bit of inclement weather returning to the Melbourne track here at Albert Park, and that's a great shame. I hope that we don't get a sprinkling of rain falling just now towards the end of this session. You can see the humidity has climbed, and yes, indeed, a few spots on the camera lens.
Yeah, coming out of 12 and up to turn 13, that's the part of the circuit furthest part from the pits, and you could see the camera, just a couple of spots of rain. It's a very high camera, maybe it's not raining around the other parts of the circuit at this present time, but indication that people were putting on their water gear, and they know this area pretty well, they know the sky very well, they know what's coming.
Here we go then. Michael sets off on a lap, and I wonder whether he's going to be able to be quick straight away. Down into turn one. Great overhead view as he uses the curb on the exit, hard on the power now and building up the speed.
Just that's what I'm talking about with the Ferrari. Schumacher can pull on the steering wheel without any fear of the back end breaking away. That's the work that Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne and all the team at Ferrari spent time doing over the winter of 2000 into 2001 that carried it through. This car makes the job that Michael Schumacher is doing a lot easier than for other drivers and other cars out on the circuit.
And look at that, the split time is immediately faster than the fastest that Rubens Barrichello has so far achieved. Michael's on a roll once again, and let's just sit and watch him here. Well, look at that, second intermediate, and he's already 0.3 of a second up.
Yeah, but he's got a Jaguar ahead of him, and whether that's going to be helpful or not, it's Eddie Irvine, old teammate of Michael Schumacher. Whether Eddie's on a run or not, I think is he going to get out of the way? Michael's going to be very frustrated indeed. Eddie hasn't let him go through, and you can see the difference in speed. Now Michael dives down the inside, and you can just imagine what's going on in Michael's mind, saying, well, thanks a bunch, mate, I helped you. Look, he's even going to, and Eddie, that was naughty, Eddie. You didn't have to do that. You could have let Schumacher go through as he came through turn 14.
So across the line, this is not going to be what it could have been. A 129.170 from Michael Schumacher, 2.1 seconds off Rubens' fastest time so far. It's Barrichello from Coulthard, from Raikkonen, Panis, And then as we go on down the list, Jenson Button is down in 7th place at the moment. Jacques Villeneuve down in 10th position.
This man, Montoya, down in 18th, but he's got greens up on our timing screen. That means it's a personal best for him, so he will improve, but whether he's going to improve sufficiently to make him happy, there you can see 27.0 is the quickest time so far. Montoya's gone 4th, 28.278.
Well, that's still some time to find. Barrichello's just gone fastest once again, a 1:27.008. But stays fastest, rather. He's still in the pits at the moment. That time set just a little while ago. Here he comes now, Rubens, to go on track with just 8.5 minutes or so to go.
Oh, another Jordan's gone off. That's Fisichella.
Oh.
He was lucky. I said that was coming out of turn 8. Wow.
See if we can hear anything on the radio. He had the inboard, was just about to be held out for him anyway. And
he's still on the circuit, he's just coming around.
In fact, it was the same corner. I bet it was turn 14. The same corner that Sato went off. Fisichella got away with it.
Wow, let's take a look at this, John.
In fact, it was down to turn 13. Okay, we'll get it right, but that was the corner that leads from the back straight to, and there's a lot more space on the exit of 13 to have a spin. So fortunate for Jordan.
A very similar way the back end snapped out, though, wasn't it? Similar to what happened to Sato.
Well, they had a handling problem with the car through testing. They thought they had it sorted out. They had made some mechanical changes to the car, some aerodynamic changes as well. But suddenly, both Jordans, whether it's temperature related or whether it's a mechanical problem, seemingly causing, certainly Sato inexperience. Fisichella had maybe the nous to know it was going to go and was prepared for it.
Now look at this view from the onboard camera with the Toyota of Allan McNish. Great camera angle that we're looking at here. Just set that a little bit lower down so that you can see the driver's helmet as well as the work going on the steering wheel, and that we'll be able to enjoy that view as we go through the weekend. So much to enjoy in terms of different ways of looking at what's going on the Albert Park circuit this weekend. And here's a man to watch. It's Ralf Schumacher in the Williams BMW.
Well, nothing particularly special for Ralf Schumacher on this particular lap, as he comes down into that very tight sequence of corners down in 9 and 10. Oh, and there's a little bit of brake carbon burning of Juan Pablo Montoya. Came into the pits very quickly. You can see what's happened. He's been using those brakes. Brakes do get a bit of a hammering here. Getting cooling into them is very, very important. And of course, when you come in like that, you've got all that heat localized around the brake pad, the brake disc. The brakes don't like it at all.
No, that's right, and as you say, historically there's been brake problems here in the past. In fact, Frentzen lost out on the opportunity to win when he was driving for Williams, when he had a brake disc explode on him some years ago, and it looks as though there's certainly something a bit odd. I'm surprised that they had a little problem there when they've only been doing a couple of laps.
We still want set 32 to go on.
So, well, you never know, because if you go out, I mean, some of the drivers use left foot braking, and that also adds additional pressure and heat to the brakes. So even in a couple of laps, if you're left foot braking a lot, that's what happens.
Look at Rubens. He's improving on his existing time here, and hopefully he won't have any traffic in front of him like Michael had.
Well, he's got one car. We're just going to have a look and see where it is. I think it might be Mark Webber in the Minardi, but the track is sufficiently clear for Rubens, and the car just looks fantastic.
So here comes Rubens, just heading around. Let's just keep an eye on his time here. This could be a further improvement for the Brazilian. 1:27.008, his previous target, and look at that.
1:26.5, he's gone quicker than last year's pole. And that is a pretty special lap indeed. 1:26.8 was the pole position for Michael Schumacher. 1:26.5. But I was talking about left foot braking, and it's one of those things that people hear about. In a Grand Prix car, you've only got two pedals. One is the brake pedal, one's the throttle. A lot of drivers, principally those that have come out of go-karting, use their left foot to brake, and consequently they modulate the throttle pedal and the brake pedal at the same time, whereas a conventional driver would take his foot off the right pedal, which is the throttle, and brake. But if you use the two pedals at the same time, it increases the workload on the brakes, and consequently you can get overheating, as you've seen, or in fact a little fire in the brake disc that Montoya had to come into the pits with.
He doesn't look too impressed by what's going on there. Everybody just rushing around. Patrick Head right in there to try and determine what the problem is, and everybody just looking a little bit
bit concerned, in fact.
Yes, that's the word.
And that looks more than just a burning disc. You've got Sam Michael there and Patrick Head both diving in. Juan Pablo's going to let me have a look and see what's wrong with my car.
And look at that.
Animated.
Toyota telling us that they believe that braking is one of the most important factors around this track. Well, there's your proof of it. Some braking problem, though, for Montoya's car, and the Williams being worked on now.
Ben, Michael Schumacher out on track in a minute, lap, doing it, but he's just out on out lap, in fact. Currently 13th quickest. He's had a very, very mixed and messy session. Part of that was because they sat out for such a long time. But you normally don't see Ferrari and Michael Schumacher at this stage of a Grand Prix weekend sitting back so far. Now, they know the car's got the speed because Rubens Barrichello is currently quickest, in fact quicker than anybody's been around here in a year. Yet Michael Schumacher's not shown the performance we saw from him yesterday when everybody in the pit lane thought, not again, a car that's basically a year old going quicker than the 2002 cars. When he competes this lap, he will start a flying lap. It will be then we will know whether Michael's just been cruising around and been so confident, or whether there's been maybe something they've been disguising, which is a problem.
Well, don't forget, he was on a quick lap before he got held up by Irvine, so I think if he gets a clear one in here, we may well see a big improvement. He's going on to a fast lap now. Williams just coming out of the pit lane. Let's hope that that doesn't affect his lap too much. Down through turns 1 and 2, the back end just moving around a little bit, but all under control.
And that is fantastic. That car, I tell you what, it is just so good. It allows him to do that. Michael couldn't do that in some of the other cars in the paddock, even with his ability and skill. This is the car that lets Michael give us these virtuoso performances we've seen, well, all through last year, and we're seeing here this weekend.
Here we go, first split coming up, and he's 1/1000th of a second slower than Barrichello, and he uses all of the curve as he goes up through around the lake now, back up the back of the lake and through the first of these right-lefts, these chicanes that slow them down a little bit, but the next chicane is the one to watch out for. Very, very fast, big commitment corner.
But just watch the Ferrari as it comes through and just get an impression of how good this car is. Look, he comes and he tweaks it, then he just pulls on the steering. Look at that. It rides like a Packard, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely superb through there, wasn't it? We've seen cars dancing and flicking around through there, but that car just sat there at incredible speed, and once again Schumacher is showing us how it should be done. Ferrari are showing us how it should be done, and this surely is going to be a good lap from the reigning world champion. He's just got to get through the final quarter cleanly now to try and improve on Barrichello's target time.
Well, it's not going to make him quickest, but it could challenge Coulthard in second place. It does! Well, we saw nothing on the screen to indicate it, but Michael Schumacher, 0.2 of a second.
Amazing stuff.
26.202, and that is a full 0.6 of a second quicker than he achieved in qualifying. And this isn't really what I'd call qualifying trim that Michael Schumacher is in.
So what are we going to see in qualifying itself, John? If they're doing these times already, 26.2, definitely got to be down in the 25s. Do you think 1 minute 24s are on?
I suggested yesterday that we could see a pole position about 2 seconds a lap slower, or quicker I should say, than last year. That would be a 24.8. We're not seeing that so far this morning, so if we see, I would think maybe a middle 25, high 25, but you never know. If the weather picks up, you know, we've got 2 hours between the end of the second session, half an hour between this and the next session. We've got about 3¼ hours before qualifying begins, and the temperature will come up.
Well, there's some almost some autocrossing going on here from Felipe Massa as he now tries to set a time in the Sauber. The Brazilian rookie come out of the Euro Formula 3000 Championship and has put in some great testing performances, a bit like Raikkonen did last year.
And he's been in the top 10 all weekend. First time at a Grand Prix. When you see him speaking, he's like a little sort of choir boy. But I mean, does he ever get in and give that thing grief? Look at the steering. He's playing with the throttle, playing with the steering wheel. Again, a great car. Sauber have done such a good job over last year and through the winter testing this year. They've given Heidfeld and Massa something they can play with and they can get confidence from.
So he was 9th fastest. Is that an improvement from Massa? Well, no, it doesn't make an improvement in his position. He stays in 9th, but a good effort.
Yeah, you can see the left front tyre there. The tread is beginning to get quite low, so the tyre's worn, the performance has probably dropped away. They're probably just giving a mileage on the car, on those tyres, to get a feel for what it might be like in the Grand Prix itself.
Giancarlo Fisichella looks to be on a fairly quick lap now. You watched him through there. That was the corner we were talking about, how stable the Ferrari was of Michael Schumacher. You could see Fisichella pushing the car didn't look quite so stable, did it?
No, it didn't, and it also didn't look quite as quick. But Michael Schumacher is plenty quick. He's now, once again, the quickest of anybody through the first segment. He's making his way down to that second segment, and I suspect he's also going to be quickest there as well.
Yep, there he is, that second segment time. 99 thousandths of a second faster than his previous best. Michael Schumacher once again setting the pace here in the free practice sessions at Albert Park for the first Grand Prix of 2002, right over the curve there.
Well, he was very, very hard in the power. He's really trying to maximise this last segment of 4 corners before he goes across start-finish line. He's going to try and get below that 1 minute 26.202 he set on his penultimate lap. So let's see whether he can do it. It's going to be very tight. No, he's not going to do it.
Oh, he gets
an improvement, but
it's not quite into the 1 minute 25. No. So Michael Schumacher ends the session as he did yesterday by taking the fastest time. And the Ferrari from last year still is the class. This is Felipe Massa. Once again, we were talking about him a moment ago, but he got away with it, John.
Yes, I mean, he's getting away with it because he's got a very, very good car under him. And when you've got that type of car, you can do so many things, and it's very, very valuable for a young driver at the beginning of his career.
So Massa has survived the session, unlike the other rookie, Takuma Sato.
What you did in the fastest lap, so you have to think well about it.
And the team working with him. It's an education process in many ways as he learns everything that's required to get the most out of the car, and they've got to help him do that. But very promising performance indeed from Felipe Massa in that session.
And I mean, we've seen some very, very spectacular driving from Felipe Massa, but so far he's managed to stay on track. And you know, he's in 20 years, I can't get over this, 20 years of age, driving a car like that. I mean, it's shocking in a way, isn't it?
It is amazing. And it's interesting to me this year, the fact that we've got some rookies of very different backgrounds. And you've got some young rookies, him and Takuma Sato. You've got Mark Webber, who's got a bit more experience, and Alan McNish, an older rookie with a lot of experience. Fascinating to see how they all compare throughout the year. Nick Heidfeld, that's Felipe Massa's teammate, just coasting back. Doesn't look as though there's any damage to the car. Might have just run out of fuel or something.
It's not held up there. Difficult to say if it's a lot better. I mean, makes the car a bit more nervous, but probably for new tires it's okay. I have a bit less understeer, but car's a bit more nervous under braking. More on high-speed corners I feel more grip. On some low-speed corners it's even more understeer.
Well, a familiar story for a Formula One driver. It never ever is perfect.
How was the positions like?
The moment is P8. You have Tamis in front of you, Montoya, Ralph, Raikkonen, Coulthard, Barrichello and Michael.
Okay. And behind?
Behind there is Felipe, that is a bit less than 2 tenths behind. Then Trulli, Button, Villeneuve, Fisichella, Frenzen, Bernardi, Salo, McNish, Sato, Weber.
Well, Nick has decided to get out of the car. They'll have to come and tow this Sauber back to the pits. Hopefully nothing serious, maybe nothing more than running out of fuel. It would be unlikely that the team would do that, run it that fine, but these things do happen. And Peter Sauber, he seems fairly happy, nothing too concerned. But the trouble is there's only a 30 minutes break between the end of this session and the start of the next session, so it'll take about 10 to 15 minutes for that car to be returned to the pits. So I hope Nick's given them the message. Though we got to hear most of the conversation, it didn't sound like it was very mysterious, mechanical or anything else.
No, the team doing our job for us, telling us what the order is. Michael Schumacher heads the session, the first free practice of Saturday, from Rubens Barrichello, his teammate. The 2 McLarens next up in 3rd and 4th, then the 2 Williams. So we are seeing a team formation here. Panis and Heidfeld next up, and then Massa and Trulli.
Ben, just should point out to our viewers, when you see a B after a driver's name or an M, B reflects the Bridgestone tyre, M is for Michelin, and that's the information that we're going to bring you for every session. Obviously you'll establish once the season is underway which teams run with which tyre companies, but nonetheless it's just there as confirmation.
So Button in 11th place, just ahead of Villeneuve, Giancarlo Fisichella and Frentzen and Benoldi in the 2 Arrows. fairly evenly matched. Then the two Toyotas, Mika Salo and Alan McNish, again not disgraced in any way, but dropping down as the session continued. And Takuma Sato, who of course damaged his car. Eddie Irvine, I'm afraid, a long way down the order there, only just ahead of Alex Jung. To a great surprise, I think Eddie must have had some sort of difficulty during that session.
And maybe that explains why Eddie was being rather uncooperative with Michael Schumacher. He's probably just so fed up with the whole situation.
Interesting, yesterday he was quite positive, more positive than I thought about the handling of the car, but perhaps that hasn't been reflected quite so much in today's session.
Well, we're going to take a look back at some of the highlights of this session in a moment. Here they come.